Oop, I should be live. Hello. I just pressed the wrong button, but that's all right. I was ready to go live anyway. All right, let me just scoot this around 1 second. This is what I was doing. I was messing with this because that's the topic I'm going to talk about first right now. Because today's lecture is primarily about feeling, being that it's called "Feel Deeply." Makes sense. Um, so that's what these selection of quotes are talking about. And I'll talk about it very briefly in just a second. I want it to look good. You know how it is. There we go. So it's big enough that people can read it. There we go. And I have my noise gate on, but we have got some construction happening today. So they may bust through the noise gate, but they should be wrapping up soon. All right, first order of business. Obviously, Campbell, Complicated, does the music for this stream. And every Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, he streams with his trio live here on Twitch. So you can go and check that out. Support the stream live. Or right now, you could go load up there's at least 2 videos up right now of prior week's gigs, essentially, their whole sets. You can listen to that while you're listening to me. Watch it any other time. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. It's really, really dope. Really, really dope music. All right. So let me scoot that text over just again. Today's lecture is Feel Deeply, and it's kind of short, so I may end up just randomly picking another lecture on stream because this one may be like 20 minutes and we're done. And that's just not, I want to have a little bit longer streams here. Okay, so it's pretty common. It's a pretty common question. It's one of the top, I would say, frequently asked questions when someone's new to Neville, whether they're hearing it firsthand or secondhand, or they don't even know who Neville is and they're hearing it secondhand. What is meant by the word feeling? Does it mean emotion, or is it something else? Because I think a lot of people get confused and think it's only emotion, and so they think that means you have to really include a superlative of emotion, like an overemphasis of emotion in any kind of imaginal activity. Like you need to hype it up way beyond what you would experience and just the emotional component of it. But that is not at all what Neville's talking about. And I think just these 2 lectures alone, both on Tuesday and today, Neville makes it pretty clear what he means by feeling. In this lecture in particular, he says literally, and it's one of the quotes on the screen, a deep conviction felt. It's far more important than anything you could ever think. So there we have a definition of a deep conviction. Last week, or not last week, 2 days ago, in the State of Vision, Neville talked about using different senses, one or a combination of them, to create the tones of reality, create the sense of naturalness, so that your Jacob desire can be felt real, which is the Esau, the exterior world, to add those tones of reality, add that Esau into your desire, which right now is unclothed, meaning it doesn't seem real. So that sense of reality, that sense of this is happening now, that's feeling. It's a spiritual sensation. And in that lecture, go back and listen to it or read it or whatever, Neville talks a lot about what he means by that, what spiritual sensation is. And, I also gave examples of how we could pick an object right now. I picked an apple, and how you could instantly identify in your mind alone what all the aspects of it, what it would feel like in your hand, what it would look like, obviously, if we pick a red apple, what it would smell like, what it would taste like. Now, it doesn't have sound, but if you thought it, it will have a sound, right? And if it has little bruises on it, you can feel that too. Well, that's spiritual sensation, that's feeling. So when Neville's talking about feeling, he's talking about imaginal acumen. He's talking about that ability that you have. And he's talking about selecting your reality through that process. And also talking about your sense of identity. So to sort of summarize, feeling is very succinctly your individual identity, your specific chosen identity that you have picked right now, and the spiritual sensation of what comes next, which you're doing anyway, whether you're imagining consciously or not. You're making decisions all throughout the day about what can happen to you and what will happen to you based on how you conceive of yourself. And when you do that, you're feeling into those states. You're feeling into that experience, and it will externalize itself in your world at some point. Also, I like to think of feeling just as a state. Feeling and state, those two words being essentially the same word, which is to mean they are this. They're an overall compound of various elements, and the state is the totality of it. And that feeling aspect of that totality would be what makes it real to your consciousness, what makes it something you can experience. So included in that could be emotion. So if you are using the technique of creating scenes, and let's say you're primarily a visual, an auditory and visual person. So you have a conversation with someone, you visualize their face, maybe where you guys are, and you hear their voice. And you're not adding any other senses. You're not worrying about what you smell, or you don't have anything you're eating or drinking at the time. You're not worried about anything besides just hearing and seeing them, right? But what you might also be doing, and it's certainly recommended because it's part of capturing the state, is based on the conversation, you will have certain emotions. And all of that cascade of emotions, because it's not just going to be one emotion. Now, maybe depending on your scene, there is a dominant primary emotion, and that's really all that's going on because it's very brief and you only feel that one emotion in that moment. But, even so, things can be, especially something like success or love, is very complicated, and it's more like a harmony where it has all these different emotional notes to it. And that specificity to you is what you should be baking into scenes or affirmations or just like wordless sensations. That's the feeling right there. So to get a little more precise about that, how you think and feel about success is different than how someone you've known, like let's say your best friend, your brother, your sister, someone who is your contemporary, you've known your whole life, and you guys have a lot of experiences together. You probably have a lot of similar goals, like, just general, you want family, career success, those kind of things. But the way you experience a success in your career is going to be totally different than how they experience a comparable success in their career. Even if you guys are twins, I guarantee that this is the case. All those specific emotions and thoughts involved are going to be really contrastingly different. And your sense of that, your feeling of that, your conviction of that is what should be baked into any kind of imaginal activity. Now, there's a lot of people who will want to say that, well, you can just say affirmations, you don't have to feel into them. And I've had things manifest that I didn't necessarily feel into, but that's because when they manifested, they didn't have, there was no feeling that really needed to be there. It was very easy for me to identify that as something real and have it express. It didn't have any additional tones I needed to add, and there wasn't an emotional component to it at all, and it was something I already expected could happen for me, because that's really the big part here, is how much have you adjusted your self-concept to include this possibility for yourself, to see yourself as one already having this thing you want. That's the key component of this feeling. Who are you when you have this? So Neville uses a lot of words like state and feeling to really describe the same thing, which is this overall sense of self having a certain thing, expressing a certain thing, experiencing a certain thing. But keep in mind, part of that can be the emotion. But also keep in mind, those emotions are going to fluctuate. Even in one little 30-second thing that you're imagining, you could have a cascade of emotions. And what I have experienced personally is that, and this is where I was visualizing, and I was visualizing on the spot, and it happened within about half an hour of the visualization at a thing I had already consciously manifested. It was a little lecture about roasting coffee. I included the emotion in the scene. I did 2 scenes and included the emotion in them. Well, no, 3 scenes and included the emotion in all of them. But what was so cool is when it manifested, the emotion that I experienced was so much higher than what I had baked into the scenes. It was so much more intense. It had a greater vibrancy. But I expected it to be basically the same, so I was surprised when that happened. And you may also be surprised or not that when the thing manifests, you feel a greater intensity of emotion, and emotions you didn't anticipate, that you didn't know would be part of that particular state, of that particular expression. But keep in mind, like, just have the general assumption that those are going to be pleasant experiences for you. That there's not going to be like some unanticipated awful emotion that gets baked in. It's all going to be really awesome and extra nice for you. All right, so I think that is a pretty good, concise explanation of what's meant by feeling. I mean, we have the quotes here. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality is in probably innumerable lectures and books. Faith is feeling was so important when I read it in one of the books that I put it at the front of the book. It's probably in Feeling is the Secret. I wrote it in the front of the book because I was like, that's so important to keep in mind. Like, you could just take that one maxim alone and accomplish anything and everything you needed to do. Let's see, 206. So that comes from Feeling is the Secret, and faith is loyal to the unseen reality is probably in there as well. But if you want to, conduct a little 3-sentence maxim about Neville's teachings, you want to summarize it as succinctly as possible. That's it. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. Faith is feeling, and feeling is the secret of all creation. It's pretty much it. But I guess I don't think I really addressed just now the idea that you could manifest something with affirmations alone, because I think you could. It's just it's probably the same as what I experienced, where you caught a bit of it and you caught enough of it to land the fish, but there was so much more there that you knew was there that you didn't necessarily pull out when you were creating and conducting that scene. And by the way, I don't know what sound that was I just caused, but yeah, hopefully it's not loud on the mix. All right, we'll scoot into the lecture now, and I might. I had restarted it. I might go in for another one because this should probably wrap up pretty quick. I had been considering for today Barabbas or Jesus, but I think it's a little bit more. That lecture is very much just a bunch of biblical symbolism, and I don't know if that's really. Oh my God, that's really the great thing for one of these early level lectures. I feel like I've already picked enough that have that kind of stuff where really a lot of those metaphors are not useful or desirable to, I would assume, and maybe it's a bad assumption or it's an incorrect assumption. A lot of those metaphors are not useful, helpful, And it can be a turnoff to people who are brand new to the material. So people who are finding this through the videos on demand or through YouTube by searching beginner questions are not yet going to be interested in biblical symbolism. And in that one, I feel like he delves into it a little more than is necessary in ones we've already done, where he just, takes the story of Jacob and Esau and juxtaposes it directly next to his experience getting out of the military. Okay, feel deeply, May 30th, 1969. What you feel deeply is far more important than what you are thinking. You may think about doing something for a long time and never do it, but when you feel something deeply, you are spurred to act, and God acts. He who is the cause of all life acts through the sense of feeling. You can think of 1,000 things, yet not be moved to act upon one of them. A deep conviction felt is far more important than anything you could ever think. Let us turn to the first chapter of the Epistle of James. Ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like the wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. Let not that person believe that a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways, shall receive anything from the Lord. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourself. For if you are a hearer only and not a doer, you are like a man who observes his natural face in the mirror, and then goes his way, forgetting what he is like. But if you are a doer of the word, and not just a forgetful hearer, you will look into the perfect law of liberty and persevere. That man shall be blessed in all his doings. And here, the first sentiment is addressing faith, and we just said faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. So if, let's say there's something you desire extremely strongly, let's just pick a certain job you want, right? And you are back and forth. You're claiming it one day, and then the next day you feel like, why would they hire me? Type of state. Whichever you're feeling into more deeply, whichever more closely aligns with your overall self-concept is what is going to manifest. This is addressed in one of the other books. I can actually look up right now, because I know a lot of people have this question too, where when you're back and forth, what actually ends up manifesting, and the dominant feeling is what manifests. And Neville says explicitly that. Which wins if there is the dominant of the two feelings is the one expressed on page 192. It's probably in Feeling is a Secret as well, because that's around that portion of the book. Yeah, it's in Feeling is a Secret. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 of Feeling is a Secret. It's made explicit. Every feeling makes a subconscious impression, and unless it is counteracted by a more powerful feeling of an opposite nature, must be expressed. The dominant of two feelings is the one expressed. And then he goes on to give some little tips on how to create the more intense and dominant feeling. What you feel you are always dominates what you feel you would like to be. Therefore, to be realized, the wish must be felt as a state that is, rather than a state that is not. And that also addresses the idea of time, because to feel that something will happen to you is not as powerful as feeling as, I am this now. And it's said here, I am healthy is a stronger feeling than I will be healthy. To feel I will be is to confess I am not. I am is stronger than I am not. So yeah, you can read the relevant section around that in the first chapter, Faith is Your Feeling, if you need a little more clarity. But I think that's pretty straightforward. If you're going back and forth between something, whatever you're really convinced about yourself is what's going to express. How do you go about being a doer in place of a hearer only? By acting in faith. Scripture's central character called Jesus set no limit upon the love of God and the power of faith. In fact, all of his great deeds were prefaced with the words, according to your faith. Now faith encompasses feeling. If you have faith, you will act. And if you act, God in you is acting. For God is your own wonderful human imagination, whose eternal name is I am. He acts only when you feel it. This is true even in the most practical way. If I tell you what I would like to be, and you tell me to go my way, as I am already it, and for one fleeting moment I see the world as I would see it if it were true, then turn and walk away, forgetting what the world looked like only a moment before, I am a forgetful hearer. But if I am a doer of the word and not a hearer only, I persevere. Or as the word is translated in the King James Version, I continue in the state. For all things are possible to the power of the word. Look in a mirror, and you will see your face reflected there. But you have another mirror which you can look into. That's the mirror of your friends. If they heard your good news, their faces were reflected, would they not? Assume your desire is now a fact. Feel its substance and reality. Then let your friends see you in that state. They are your living mirror. Now persevere in that state, and do not turn away and quickly forget what you are like. Walk through this door tonight in the assumption that you are the man or woman you want to be. It doesn't make any difference if the outside denies it. You have seen the expression on the faces of your friends and heard their congratulations on the inside with faith. Now carry this feeling into the deep and persevere. Conjure a living mirror of friends and acquaintances who have heard your good news and accepted it as permanent. See your face reflected in theirs. If they love you, you will see empathy. They will be rejoicing because of your good fortune. Now persevere in that awareness and do not forget what you have seen in your living mirror. If you do, you will be blessed in the doing. As you are told in the first chapter of the book of Psalms, blessed is the man who delights in the law of the Lord, the perfect law of liberty. For in all that he does, he prospers. Were you not liberated from your past when you saw your friends' faces, reflecting what you wanted them to see? If you had left the state of poverty, sickness, or weakness behind, and moved into the state of wealth, health, or strength, and your friends knew it, you would be set free from your former limitation. So looking into the perfect law of liberty and persevering, you are blessed in all that you do. I tell you from personal experience that this works, but we are the operant power. It does not operate itself. You may have heard this law by the hearing of the ear and read of it in a book, but do you know that the law works from experience? Have you put it to the test? Have you proved it? If you have, then you can speak with an authority which was not yours prior to the proving. May I tell you, through the use of this law, you are completely set free. And because Neville uses the refrain of a lot, we've heard it in at least 2 other lectures so far about you being the operant power. The law doesn't operate itself. And what he means there is that you have to move in your sense of feeling into something in order to express it. However, he doesn't necessarily mean, and this is made clear in several other lectures too, that you don't necessarily have to have a scene or affirmations or any other imaginal technique involved other than simply assuming. Like really just taking on that state, embodying it now, saying it is done, and knowing that this will express in the span of time. You can do that. I do think that takes a higher degree of faith that's developed through manifesting more things and through moving into a better overall sense of self. That's something that it's probably happening to people when it comes to smaller things in their life and to just like things that they have, like patterns and loops they have. It's happening all the time because everything's your manifestation. But my point there is someone who's just waking up, just discovering this, to move into a totally different state from what you are now, without a scene, without affirmations, without any other kind of imaginal activity that's going to get you there, scripting or something like that, or it's tough. It would be hard to make a major shift until you've really built up those prior experiences doing it. But the more you just pay attention to your own thoughts, the more you will see that it is happening on a daily basis. So then you can take that simple way it's happening and apply it to these larger shifts in your self-identity. But yeah, I just want to bring that up because for people who have been manifesting things for consciously manifesting bigger things for quite a bit, it can sometimes feel you can get yourself caught in a state of never assuming to be what you want to be because you're too busy coming up with scenes and affirmations and all this other stuff. So you're in the state of trying to get it instead of just boom, moving into the state of already having it. You're thinking you need to do all that stuff to get you there, but you've already done enough to know how to just boom, move into something. So just boom, move into it on this new thing you want. Or, new. I have been in many places where I was forced to test this principle. While on the little island of Barbados, which had only 2 small ships servicing it, as well as the hundreds of islands nearby, I made a commitment to give a series of lectures in Milwaukee on the 1st of May. When I called, the shipping agent informed me that due to the fact that the ship sailing out of New York City carried only 60 passengers and the one from Boston carried only 100, there was no passage available before the 1st of September. He promised to put my name on the waiting list, but gave me no encouragement as the list was very long. Okay, so he needed to get there for May, and they're like, we can get you in September. I hung up the phone and sat in my chair in the hotel room, closed my eyes, and assumed I was aboard a ship heading toward New York City. I assumed 8 or 10 of my family were coming aboard with me, and that my brother Victor was carrying my little girl. I could feel the motion of the plank. Having no stateroom committed, I remained on the deck and placed my mental hands on the rail and felt the salt of the sea there. Then I looked back nostalgically at the little island. I repeated that action over and over again, feeling every step I made onto the gangplank. I felt the rail and smelled the salt of the sea. I did everything that a feeling could be brought to bear upon, and when my actions seemed natural, I broke it. The very next day, I received confirmation that I would be sailing on a ship which would land in New York City 1 week before my commitment in Milwaukee, which I did. When I asked the agent how I obtained the tickets, he said they had a cancellation in New York, and the one person he had called on the waiting list felt that the timing was inconvenient. So knowing he could accommodate my wife, our little daughter, and myself in one cabin, he let us in. I never heard why someone canceled in New York or why the one he called in Barbados could not take the ship at that time, or why the agent did not call all the others on the waiting list, because remember, he was put down on the bottom of it. I only know that I got the reservation I had imagined. I have told this story before, and someone in the audience once said, was that a Christian thing to do? You might have caused someone to cancel their trip, but I tell you, as I told her, it was the only Christian thing to do, for I used the Christian principle of fulfilling God's law. How it is going to be fulfilled is not my concern. I am told that whatever I desire, if I will but believe I have received it, I will. God never creates a desire in a human heart that he has not already provided its satisfaction. That is true of every desire in this world, as well as the greatest of all desires, which is the thirst for God. There's another smaller point addressed here too. So firstly, this idea of, is this a moral thing to do? Is it okay that you basically took someone else's spot? What Neville is saying here is when it comes to that, you need to trust that the Father has ordered everything aright. It's all the details are already worked out. You don't have to worry about that. Part of having faith is knowing that no one's going to be harmed in order to bring you your manifestation if it's something nice and lovely. I mean, unless you're intentionally, specifically imagining harm on other people, there's no one's going to be harmed in bringing you what you want. But the twist of that is you have to go outside of our normal bounds of morality. I don't know if we did it in one of the lectures so far, but there's 2 really good stories about this where basically someone who's trying to cheat in one case, and in the other case someone who is a thief, they're used in the manifestation to bring the manifestation about. So in the first case, Neville wanted to get tickets for his. We'll get to the lecture where he talks about this because I think it's a great story. He wanted to get tickets for sold out Aida because his brothers were in the city and they wanted to go. and he assumed prior to going that they would get the tickets, they would go. I think he visualized, he didn't want to go, but the brothers wanted to go. I think he visualized them going or something like that. And then went to the box office where they had giant posters being like, Aida sold out, don't even try, bitch. And he got in the line, and the guy in front of him was running some kind of racket where he was trying to basically trick the ticket salesman into thinking he hadn't given him his right change. And so to, as a way to try to extract extra money out of him by saying, oh, you shorted me my change, you owe me $100 type of deal. And Neville called him out. Neville shouted the guy out and said he knew what he was doing type of deal, called him out. And the ticket seller so respected that when Neville walked up to get the tickets, he not only gave him tickets, he gave him really great seating, something that is otherwise not available, like your sort of VIP section tickets. So that there shows that, and he explicates on that fact that that person who was in that less than great state, in that state of cheating other people, was used to bring Neville his manifestation. That guy's doing that anyway. He's out in that cheating state anyway. He's just brought into the scene to do his part, is essentially Neville's point when he's telling that story. And in the case, and then the other experience, there was a lady who wanted a bunch of new stuff for her house, she just wanted new stuff, and so she imagined having new things. And what happened is her house got robbed, and all the stuff she didn't want got stolen. And she had insurance, and the insurance covered better than she imagined for all the new stuff. And Neville's point there was that the thieves were part of the unfolding. And her unfolding didn't have to necessarily go that way, but you don't even know what was going on in that thief's life. Maybe part of the unfolding there was the stuff he stole ended up with someone else he knew who needed that stuff, who needed to get a deal on some, okay but older furniture. And so, and the lady, she was just going to throw it out anyway. She didn't want the stuff anymore. She wanted the new stuff. So it's not like she was really robbed. She was totally enabled, right? And then meanwhile, the furniture could get some new life, and the thief gets a little bit of money. So actually, everybody's quite happy in that transaction. It's just we have a moral sense of not taking things from other people. But if you look at the totality of it, well, creation's finished. You're not taking anything from anybody else, especially considering they're all you. But anyway, that's a little bit of an aside there, because really the point is, whoever canceled, whatever two people canceled the Barbados trip, they weren't put out. They weren't totally screwed over by this. They weren't oh, now I'm stranded on Barbados for 5 years or something, and I don't want to be here in paradise. They weren't even inconvenienced. This was totally okay for them to experience. And then the other component, the other thing that's addressed here that is a common, beginner question related to Neville. And so I'm trying to find where he talked about it. And this is actually something that my friend Naomi pointed out. Okay, when it comes to his scene, so people talk about living in the end. In other words, picking a state after what you want you've already experienced what you want, picking a state where it's actually totally done and you're a little bit after that, basically. That's the end. So instead of identifying with, let's say marriage, instead of identifying with the proposal, identifying with an anniversary. The anniversary would be a better end, based on whatever your desire is. If your desire is really marriage, the anniversary is a better end than the proposal, just factually. However, if you knew, based on that proposal, that you would have a happy, lifelong marriage, if you really knew in that scene that was what would come of that, that would be okay. However, for the most part, the anniversary is better, because in that state you are more identified with this being a stable, long-term, extremely strong bond. Now, here, Neville wants to go actually to Milwaukee. His end is he needs to give a lecture in Milwaukee. All right, but first he's got to get back to New York because that's how the ships are running. They don't have planes, I guess, at this point in time. So he didn't pick Milwaukee. Now, we don't know what was in his mind at the time. He may have visualized doing those talks in Milwaukee. Certainly, as he was thinking about what he was going to talk about, he did. So that's some imaginal activity that happened prior to this that he doesn't mention in this story that may have occurred. We don't know. But when he knew he needs to be in Milwaukee in May, he didn't imagine being in Milwaukee. He didn't even imagine being in New York City. He imagined getting on the ship to go back to New York City. That's definitely not his end, but it still worked. And it still worked because he knew if he's on that ship, he's going to be in New York. And he's in New York, he's going to end up in Milwaukee. So in it was his assumption that his final destination of Milwaukee would also manifest. That's kind of a nuance there. That's a trickier thing for people to sort out. But I would just say whatever your primal and primary, because some desires are primal, whatever your primary desire really is, don't be too concerned about if it's the optimal end if you know for a fact that in this scene or in this affirmation, it's contained within it everything you want from it. So like I said, with the proposal one, if you knew based on this proposal that you would be with this person for the rest of your life and that's what you want, based on the proposal scene, you know that to be a fact, then fine, go with that. That's the perfect scene. I mean, if you know based on, like if you're doing it for a job, if you know based on an interview scene that you are definitely going to get this job, then you can emphasize that. If you really know that the way this is playing out in your mind and the state you're identifying with is, I got this job, even though you're imagining an interview, it will manifest. But it's ultimately that conviction of self, that sense of self, that's emanating what goes forward. But yeah, that's the little nuance point there. It's like, okay, well, he actually didn't pick his ideal end and still got his end, his ultimate end of Milwaukee, Okay, I'm just finding where we left off. All right. I'm going to reread this last part for. God never creates a desire in the human heart that he has not already proved its satisfaction. This is true of every desire in this world, as well as the greatest of all desires, which is the thirst for God. Do you really want an experience of God? Apply this principle towards it. Do what I did when I wanted to leave Barbados and come to America. I looked into the perfect law of liberty and persevered. God doesn't give you one law for your desires of this world and another law for your search for him. It's the same law. If you have had the experience of which I speak, would you tell someone about it? Is it a consuming desire, or do you want something other than that first? Perhaps you want a lovely home, security in the sense of money in the bank that you can touch, or stocks and bonds that pay dividends. If you want to feel wealthy, travel, and have lots of things before you thirst for an experience of Christ, it is secondary, so don't try it. But if an experience of Christ is your consuming desire, then don't hesitate to put it to the test. Put first things first. If your first desire is to be recognized in the work that I am doing, then apply this principle towards it and let that thirst for God take its own good time to envelop you. And when it does, apply this principle towards it. This is a really, I forgot this paragraph was here. This is a really great advice on, well, if you have a lot of desires, how do you pick which one you should focus on first? And it's like, well, what do you want more? And here he's also explicitly saying that you can manifest the promise is really what's going on here. Like this thirst for God, of knowing God intimately, that's the promise. And what he's saying is, however you're manifesting whatever else is going on in your life, you can apply it to the promise and manifest movement in the first vision basically that way if you want to, or you can manifest other experiences that are similar to it, that get you closer to that knowledge of self if you want that. But he says here, look, if you really want, to be rich and travel and all that, if you really want that more right now, go for that first. And I think that this applies to literally anything, like if there's a whole bunch of things you want, what do you really want the most? Now, if it's like you're spending like a long time on it, like you're spending like a year or something on it, I don't know, maybe somebody here has done that. You really should be having other things too that you're including in that you're including in your overall vision for your life, because some of those are just as, they're just as primary desires. Feel in depth for what you feel deeply is more vital than what you think. Every day you can think about how wonderful it would be if, and never act. But if every day you will feel how wonderful it is now, it will become true. Shakespeare said, assume a virtue if you have it not. A virtue must be felt to be assumed. Refrain from the assumption tonight, and it will be easy to refrain next week, and still easier the next. But if you will assume your desire is fulfilled now, and persevere in that assumption through the sense of feeling, it will be externalized as a literal fact in your world. This is about the delayed occupancy, thinking of it, not thinking from it. I am calling upon everyone to put this into practice. Every desire contains its own satisfaction to be fed upon. It's entirely up to you. You may feed your hunger by thinking of your desire, or feed its satisfaction by thinking from its fulfillment. It is God who gives you every desire, be for things of this age or the age to come, as told in the book of Amos. I don't know if that's Amos or something totally different. I will send a famine upon the world. It will not be a hunger for bread or a thirst for water, but for the hearing of the word of God. I think this is a really great quote here. Like, this is a really perfect metaphor, a really perfect instruction on... This is another thing, too, when it comes to scenes. Like, besides, like, is this really your end or whatever? Does it embody what you want? Are you hitting... Are you really quenching yourself? Are you really totally satisfied in that scene? Do you really feel you've obtained what you desire when you're playing out that scene? Or is it like, it's kind of what I want, like it's a third of what I want, but it's not what I really want out of this? Like, I think people can do that with relationships, where they're constantly imagining a text, but they really want a long-term commitment with somebody. Well, you're really just making yourself hungrier there, You may feed your hunger by thinking of your desire, or feed its satisfaction by thinking from its fulfillment. When you want to speak the word of God, your hunger is not for the hearing of the word, but for the glamour connected with the teaching. It is the spotlight that you desire, and that too has been provided for. Every desire can and will be satisfied if you will look into the law of liberty and persevere. Then you will be blessed in all you do. Well, look, Neville calling me out here. It's really more, I want more people to start watching these so we have more of a dialogue. Oh, hey, Layla's here. As I'm saying that. Layla, I don't know when you got here because I've been kind of focused on the text and not over there. But if you have any questions, next time I look over, I'll see them. Or if you have any comments, any things that you've been manifesting lately, let me know if you're still tuned in. If not, keep watching the VODs. If you're watching the VODs, what's up? Let me see where we had here. Yeah, well, this call-out sprays here. Is the spotlight desire? Because, I'm teaching this stuff, right? I'm telling you about it. Because I heard it. Yeah, I don't have this hunger for the hearing of the word. I heard it. I read it. I'll keep going through the lessons, but there was a phase where I was listening to Neville nonstop every day, and it's like it was like I needed it. It was like I needed to hear it. And now it's just like I enjoy it. I really love his voice. Obviously what's being taught is super important to me now. But there's not the hunger. The hunger isn't there anymore. And then how much of a spotlight I desire, I don't know, because it's more like I want to see how far I can push my own understanding through noticing other people's understanding. Like, how much can we remember together is kind of the big question I have. And then I want to really see if I move into a state where everybody knows this, everybody applies this, what's that like? That's really the biggest question. If you and everyone you know understand the law and how to apply it successfully, like either without fail or like 80, let's give you like a success rate of like just 40%. 40% of the time you can successfully apply the law and manifest exactly what you want. That's pretty awesome. And everyone you know, it's the same. Man, what's that world like? What if it's 100% of the time? What if everybody knows this and they all know how to apply it and they all know how to manifest everything they want? What is that world like? That's really the question I'm asking here. And right now, you just got here 5 minutes ago. Right now, there's not the whole world in this chat, and I wouldn't want the whole world in this chat, but enough people that we're all seeing these big movements. That would be really cool. A chap came to see me from New York City yesterday. When I heard his request, I would not tell him my reaction to it, but that I would hear that he had it. This chap, now retired from the antique department of Macy's, had been teaching in one of these isms back east. Then he started corresponding with a group out here who, unable to believe in themselves, wants a leader. So they asked him to come lead them. When he told me the nature of his desire, I was sorry that all he could see in his life was the spotlight, but I granted it to him. He is tired of playing third, fourth, or fifth fiddle to a leader who has milked $1 million out of those who are buying bricks into heaven. Having nothing, this man's followers are building heaven for him and giving it to him as their gift. They have bought valuable land in New York City and built a building on it. Then he threw a banquet at a large hotel, and they paid $50 for the privilege of seeing the mortgage they paid for burned. But the land and building are in his name. I forgot this story. That's crazy. Back in 1943, this same man told me he was coming to New York for only one purpose, and that was to make money in the so-called New Thought movement. When I heard him saying this, I thought he was in the wrong profession. If he wanted to make a lot of money, he should go into steel, oil, or coal. If you want to do this work, you can live well, but will not have the ambition for millions. Well, he wanted lots of money, and now he has it, as well as homes in the country, an apartment in the city, and a lovely large building in New York City, which those who love to be milked paid for. The chap who came to see me assisted this man. He has seen how phony it has been, but he hasn't completely overcome it. He still wants the spotlight, and now he has the opportunity to get it. I will pray for his success, not as a teacher, for he is not one, but for the glamour he will receive by those who want the nonsense. And they are going to start off by not eating meat, smoking, or drinking. In fact, a complete loss of the palate. His request does not offend my moral code, so I can easily say that he is successful. But I urge you who are sincere to try to create within yourself a longing for the deepest of all desires, and that is to know God from experience. If you can really thirst for God above everything else, then use the same law of liberty. Look into the faces of your friends and say with deep conviction and feeling, I had the experiences of which Neville speaks. The entire series, from the resurrection to the descent of the dove, has unfolded within me. Then persevere, for God has provided a satisfaction for that hunger, and you will know it. But if this hunger is not yet upon you, and you sincerely want a better way of living, that is not wrong. Simply use the same principle of the perfect law of liberty and persevere. Having acted, don't turn and forget what you have done, but sleep in that conviction, and in a way you do not know it will be yours. This bit here, his request does not offend my moral code. Um, you know, this is a very interesting manifestation that Neville gave this dude. I totally forgot about this. It's crazy. But the point I would make, and what's really interesting about it too is this is like from an old man perspective. This is one of Neville's competitors, effectively, But that Neville didn't give a fuck. Like, it's like at the end of the day, he understands that the man is him. It's an aspect of him who has a certain desire. In this case, the guy wanted the glamour of effectively being like worshipped as a man, like worshipped as like some guru, and having lots of money. He wanted this little glamorous life with all these like followers. And that was like, well, there's a lot of people that want to be followers. There's a lot of people that want to give you money. Okay, I'll see that for you. So to him, it was okay. It was an okay thing to give this guy. He didn't really care. Fine, I'll give you that. If you look at that and say that is awful, those people need to be finding their own path. They need to be spending their money more productively. They need to be spending their thoughts more productively. This guy doesn't even know how to teach. Though Neville said he didn't grant him that he was a good teacher because he didn't think he was. But he did grant him the spotlight he wanted. Now in that way, maybe that was the way the guy specifically desired when he told him about it. So that's why he gave it to him that way instead of, giving him some other form of being famous that the guy would have liked instead. But my point is, if anything that anyone tells you they want, if it offends your moral code, if it offends your morality, if you think that's not right, don't imagine it for them. Like, put your foot down. Like, and by that I mean, don't let your mind give them things that you don't want them to have. Like, if this is really something you don't want to see expressed in your world, don't let it go unchecked. I mean, I was tempted to give an example there, but you know what? That's over now. That's over now. I mean, the point is, if you have someone, here's a really practical example that I think most people would agree with. If you have a friend who's being, either emotionally or physically bullied, harassed, and not just by one person, but by multiple people. This is something they're continually manifesting. They're not only being victimized, they're being aggressed. People are physically, emotionally attacking them on a pretty regular basis. Let's not say daily, but it's something happening. Obviously it'd be against most people's moral code to allow your friend to be abused. If you in your mind are continuing to see them as an abused person, as someone who is a victim, as someone who is bullied, and when they tell you of, oh, so-and-so hit them again, or oh, so-and-so said something awful about me, and I cried the rest of the workday again, and you just like say, oh, well, that's awful, but in your mind you're like, I knew that was going to happen. Like, yeah, that happens to you a lot, and you don't shift that. You don't see your friend in a different light where this is just not happening anymore. Where however that would show up for you. If this is something where they're in an abusive relationship, you would see them out of that relationship completely. They're in a toxic workplace that they just, there's no way they would be able to ever see it differently. You see them getting a new job and telling you about how great it is and everyone is so nice to them. I mean, you could also adjust it for whatever situation they're in. But if that's not something that you're able to do or you would see them as able to do, you don't have to do that. Just put them in a new relationship, new job, whatever. But my point is, it offends your moral code to see your friend suffering, doesn't it? So pull them out of that state. You don't need their consent to see them in a better state there. I don't know. That's another bit of a rant, but hey, look, if you didn't come here for a rant, why did you come here? Okay, tonight, many of our friends are not here because it is Memorial Day. But I tell you, not one moment in time is holier than another. and there is no earthly place more sacred than the other. Wherever you stand is sacred ground because you are there. Today, millions are celebrating Memorial Day, remembering the dead and placing flowers on a grave their loved ones do not occupy. The morning just prior to waking, I saw my brother Lawrence. He died at the age of 62, but looked much older because he had suffered so much before his departure. This morning, he was only about 23 years of age. We were both fully awake, and he asked me to tell his wife that the money he left her was for her, and not to save it for the children. I said, Lawrence, you don't have to go through me to tell Doris. She wouldn't give one penny to anyone anyway. She never has. Do you think she would change now? Her only concern is that you did not give it all to her, but shared equally with your 4 children. But I was with Lawrence. He was strong, strapping, and handsome, blond with brown eyes. He is the same Lawrence, with the same intelligence he had when he left here. He is younger now, but he still has the memory of the family he left behind. The veil is no clearer to him there than it is to those on this side. Only one who is awake can penetrate the veil consciously. It is easier now for me to go beyond the world of dream and enter the world of spirit waking and meet my friends there. This is a really wild experience. I might put this in a collection of like when we do, and this is be down to Pike. Like when we do sort of a series on death, I'll include these kind of experiences that Neville had and that people who came to the lectures told him they had. Because some of these things are really wild, and a lot of times it's not clear if he's talking about a vision or if or a dream, or if he actually manifested running into his brother after his brother had died. Some of those things are vague. There's a story he tells of someone who came to a lot of his meetings who manifested a lot of things with really great success, where she had a vision, but it was a waking vision, and it was just more intense than this reality. But it was a vision of her son who had died. This part here, only one who is awake can penetrate the veil consciously. I forget which book it's in, but there's a chapter called Spiritual Circumcision or just Circumcision that addresses this metaphor at a little more depth. And this idea of the veil being, once it's pierced, you know your true identity. Once that veil is lifted, you know who you really are. It's an obfuscation of self through the world, through your identity now, through who you conceive yourself to be now, and how you conceive the world to be now. You're actually veiling your true self. You're obfuscating what your real identity is. And spiritual circumcision is about lifting that veil and remembering who and what you actually are. But on Memorial Day, men think of the dead, while I am speaking of life everlasting. Let the dead bury the dead and follow me, for I have risen from the dead, and I speak of a living God who is real. I cannot go to a cemetery and put flowers or a flag on that which is not there. The body may have been placed there, but not the spirit. You are buried in the skull, and in that skull you will remain, dreaming your dream of life, until you awaken and are born the second time. It is from there you are going to find David, who reveals you as God the Father. It is from there you are going to be split in two and ascend into the Holy of Holies. You are begotten in that skull, and you will end the drama there, to know you are one with the one and only living God. In the 25th and 27th chapters of the book of Genesis, the story is told of Isaac, who had 2 sons. The first son, Esau, had hair all over, while the second son, Jacob, was hairless. Being blind, Isaac calls Esau and asks him to go get some venison for dinner. Jacob, having overheard the request, clothed himself in the skins of his brother Esau and took the venison to his father. Isaac, hearing Jacob's voice, began to doubt until he felt his reality and caught his odor. Satisfying himself that the son was real, Jacob was given the father's blessing. When Esau returned from the hunt, Jacob disappeared. But Isaac said, "Although your brother came through deception, I have given him your blessing, and I cannot take it back. After smothering yourself in feeling, you have sent it on its way and cannot take it back. For prayer is nothing more than the subjective appropriation of an objective hope. Imagine by giving objective reality to your hope. Hair is the most objective thing on a man. Bring your hope so close that you can feel what it would be like if it were objective to you. Clothe yourself in that feeling, and you have clothed yourself in the reality of an Esau. The world will not immediately reflect your feeling, but you have set your desire in motion and cannot take it back. You have given a subjective state your blessing by giving it objective reality. Now it must fulfill its destiny so that you will be blessed in all that you are doing. If you don't give your subjective hope objective reality, you can't be blessed in its fulfillment. You must clothe yourself in the feeling that your wish is fulfilled. Jacob is your desire, waiting to be clothed in the feeling of external reality. Catch the feeling, and you have clothed Jacob with the external reality of Esau. Now deceive yourself into believing that your desire is externally real, and give it your blessing by subjectively appropriating your objective hope. Who is the blind Isaac? You are, for you cannot see what you are asking for in your outer world. It's a hope, and you are blind to it. But when you clothe yourself in the feeling of its fulfillment, you are eating the feeling of satisfaction. Feast upon this feeling morning, noon, and night, and in a way you do not know, your desire will become an objective reality in your world. In this story, we see the importance of feeling. Isaac asked Jacob to come close and kiss him. The word translated kiss means to set on fire, to burn, to touch. That's an emotion, an intense feeling. Reality is felt through the sense of touch. Feeling is touch. Tasting is touch. Scripture tells us he tasted death for all of us. How do you taste death? By experiencing it. Jesus tasted death by dying in all, that all may know who he is. Now I urge you to put this teaching into practice. He taught you to simply appropriate a subjective state, which is your objective hope, and though it must externalize itself in your world. Do that and it will. Ask in faith without a doubt, for those who doubt are like the wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. They are double-minded, for they know what they are desiring to be something else. For they know what they are. They are double-minded, for they know what they are, while desiring to be something else. You must be single-minded by dropping what you believe you are and assuming that you are already what you desire to be. For you cannot desire something you already possess. This is another one of these where it's like, mega quote right here. Like, this is it. You just need that. Like, literally, you just need that for the rest of your life. There's so many. The great thing about a novel is, like, a lot of these, when I read them, I'm like, I could put every single line of this in the quotes, in my little quotes database, That said, if you are someone who is struggling with double-mindedness, it could be a very soothing thought just to remind yourself of the idea that the dominant feeling is going to express. And then to be honest with yourself, what is your dominant feeling on this? Like, let's put it in the terms of a relationship. Is really your dominant feeling that, like, something crazy, like nobody loves you, nobody wants to be with you, so you get it's just constant rejection, you're never gonna have a partner? Is that really your dominant feeling? Or is it more like, I experience love in various ways all the time, so of course it will express itself through this kind of relationship I want? And, it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship. There could be people who have a very strong desire for a really deeply loving friendship, or to rebuild or build something with a parent or a sibling that they feel estranged from. And whatever that loving desire is, just essentially, do you believe in love? Do you believe that you are lovable and you are loving? Or do you believe more in, abandonment and being left behind? Like, what is really more true for you right now? And it's okay to be honest. Because if you're honest and you're saying, well, honestly, I feel that nobody's going to love me. Like, I really honestly feel, let's say you really honestly feel that. Okay, well, you've been given the principles. You know what to do. You probably manifested a bunch of other shit already. What would it feel like for you? What would be the conversations you would have? What would be your thoughts in the day if you now felt lovable and loved? If you felt, yeah, of course I'm lovable. And of course, let's say there's a certain person you want to love you. Of course that person loves me. Or your friends, you don't feel your friends love you enough right now. Of course all my friends love me. Your family, certain family members. Of course, certain, mom or dad, or whichever other brother or sister or whoever in your family, of course that person loves me. What would it feel like to really know that and to have a conversation about knowing that? Because let's say it's an estrangement from a mother, right? And so you're really feeling like your mom, like she's still alive, and you're really feeling like, oh, your mom doesn't love you. Like you're really strongly feeling into that, and like you're estranged, you want to mend that relationship, but you really strongly feel that she doesn't care, she doesn't love you. What would it be like if you had multiple experiences with her that demonstrated she's your mother, she loves you, of course she loves you, more than life itself, duh. You've experienced that, and now you're telling your best friend. What do you feel like then? What's your sense of self then? Just shift your sense of self from right now into that and appropriate that now. You must be single-minded by dropping what you believe you are and assuming that you are already what you desire to be. For you cannot desire something you already possess. Now, we're not going to get on the dropping it rant right now because that's its own stream. Look, there's people out there, and I took the course. It was Joseph Alley's course on dropping it. People make too much of this. This one little fucking word, and then when it's combined with it, y'all all making way too much out of that. You're making way too much out of that. It's about dominance of feeling. It's not about forgetting about it or not imagining for it anymore or any other little fucking rules. It's about what does it feel like when you got it? What are you thinking when you got it? That's dropping it. And that's really my whole dropping it rant right there. Summarized. Now let us go into the silence. Look into the wonderful... So we got to do this part too, though. Look into the wonderful law of liberty which sets you free, and you will see your freedom in the faces of your friends. Persist in your assumption, and it must come to pass. Now let us go into the silence. There was a question in this lecture. I'm going to pull up the... honestly, it wasn't a great answer, but we're going to pull up the... I'm going to find it somewhere on the internet otherwise, too, so I can look at the... Actually, it's on the phone, but I got the phone for the camera right now. I'm just rolling it back. No, let's go into... I'm going to pull it up on here because there is a question. I want to be completionist. I think this one, if this is the PDF, it has it on here. It's on the PDF. Pretty sure. Because I just read it before the stream. If somehow I remembered wrong, wouldn't be the first time. I must be thinking of Barabbas had a question on it. Let me double check that's right. Because I swore I read a question this just 2 hours ago. Yeah. This is the one that had the question, Barabbas or Jesus. Now we'll do this one eventually, but like here, I'll read just this first part, because this addresses what I was talking about earlier about the having your own moral code when it comes to manifesting. Someone asked him, "Is there a fixed guide?" Well, I believe all of us present here have a certain code of decency. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Well, I believe all of us present here have a certain code of decency, and I would go along with it, but I would put into practice what I told you tonight. I would guide myself with my code of ethics. If you asked me tonight to join with you in knowing someone was dead for your good fortune, I could not. I would not deny you the right to want it, but I would say, go elsewhere. I could not actually dream with you that someone died because you were left in his will, but I would not deny you the right to want such a thing. I would leave it up to your judgment. We all have a certain code, and I think anyone who would come to a meeting of this nature would have a code of decency. That I would call a code of decency. I am always right if whenever I use my imagination, I use it lovingly on behalf of another. I am on the right track. So that to me would be the guide. Is it a loving thing to do? You have the wonderful statement in the Bible, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It is the simplest code in the world. It is done in the positive manner. Do not do, but it is written in the positive in the New Testament. In all other religions, it is written in the negative. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what would I like in this world? Something lovely, something wonderful. Well, do the same thing to anyone in the world, and every time you use your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you have done the right thing. Read Galatians 4:14. But that one little thought in which as an angel is superfluous, because the next phrase is as Christ Jesus. But as an angel, it might stop right away. That is all inserted to cushion him, because they actually saw him. Okay, this part is not important about what we're talking about here, really, and we're not going to go looking that up to make sure see what his context is. Look, the whole point is, what do you think is right? What would you be cool with? If you wouldn't be cool with it, you probably shouldn't be doing it to other people. At the same time, this part here, I would not deny you the right to want it. Judging other people's desires, seeing them as lesser than you, seeing them as wrong because they desire something that you think is wrong to desire, that has created a whole lot of calamity in the human mind and therefore human society. The subjectivity of moral codes and disallowing other people to have their desires has created really a lot of chaos and fighting that we don't need. So just as a general main rule, like one of the main rules I would strictly enforce on this channel, and I try to enforce it in my own mind all the time, is you're not allowed to talk down or say someone's wrong for wanting something they want. You may not want it. You may not want it for them. You may not want it for anybody you know. But they're allowed their desire. And I'm talking about even things that are fucked up. You don't have to act on it. You don't have to, act mentally. I mean, like, you don't have to give it to them. But that's their desire. It is what it is. That's God leading them to the state He wants to experience as them. But just in general, like, look, if you're cool with it, imagine for it. In general, though, Neville's his ethics here, and like decency, being a decent person, all the lectures I've heard of him and all the little stories and stuff. Like, if you're gonna pick like one word to put on this guy, in my mind, like decent, like he was just like a decent man. Having that sort of guiding morality to what you imagine for, and embracing the fact that it could change throughout your life, is certainly something you're going to consider on an individual basis and going to see really grow and shift within you. Um, like some things that you might deny someone right now, you might see them having, and like you might 2 or 3 years later when you talk to them again see them having it. Um, so just be aware of that and be aware of how it shifts within you. And then overall on here, you're not allowed to say like, if somebody comes in here saying they want something and they don't know how to identify with it, like they're just in a very early state related to a desire, and so they're telling us about it. Don't shit on them for that, just because it's something you don't want or don't think they should want. Like that's just not allowed. I mean, there's plenty of things people want that I have no desire for, but they're still allowed to want it, and they're really still allowed to manifest it of their own will, if that's what they really want to do, and really want to identify with. But overall, a lot of Neville's work is guided by the golden rule. He says he applies the golden rule. I think his application of the golden rule it's a little bit different to what a lot of people who were like me specifically to being sort of coached in a specific strain of Catholicism. The golden rule also applies to like the subjective moral codes that you were taught. So he actually applies it practically instead of including those little peccadillos into it. I mean, the example today of the guy having the followers and all that, like, there's no way a Catholic would say like, yeah, that's okay. That's okay for that guy to do or to be or whatever. Like that would not fall in the frame of the golden rule. You need to imagine his ass in a church is probably what they would say, right? And so, but he actually stretched it because he's like, this guy just wants to be famous. He just wants to have his little piece of land and be famous. And what do I care? Like, it means nothing to me to give that to him. There's people out there who want to be his followers. They have a mutual desire. Why not give it to them? That's definitely a stretching of a more traditional moral code. Okay, being that this one went for an hour and a half, which is about how amount of time I want to do with the lecture ones, because I ranted. Like, let's be real, I ranted for 40 of those minutes. So, if anybody out there really likes those, congratulations. There you have it. 40 minutes of rants today. So I'm not going to do another one tonight. Saturday, I'm going to have to test it first. But I'm thinking what I'm going to do on Saturday is to stream some of the games that I want to do related to imagination. There's two right now I'm mostly thinking of. One called Figment, where you literally play imagination and you're restoring the mind as imagination. That's really cool. And then there's a segment from another game I play, We Happy Few, where you find like a cult of people worshiping the yam. But it's like a lot of and then you like meet the holy yam, and a lot of things the yam says are about, like your identity and consciousness through the yam is what ends up in your world. So it's just kind of a really funny manifestation I had playing this game. So I might show that. Either way, if we don't get into one of those things, I'll just pick another lecture. And right now I'm sticking to these more introductory ones where, we're not doing a whole bunch of like biblical symbolism and we're not talking about the promise just yet. That's going to happen. But first, let me get through all these, and get a little more people showing up and seeing these and interested in this information and applying the law. And even then, even once it's like we're doing 3 promise lectures a week, still obviously talk about your manifestations. Talk about how you're applying the law in your life and if it's working for you or not. Like and if you have some sort of deficit in understanding, you've forgotten something, there's always a space for reminders. But related to that, keep in mind my questions rant from Tuesday. If you had what you wanted, would you be asking me this question? would you be searching up a stranger on the internet to ask your abstractified, Neville etymology question if you had what you already wanted? Fuck no. So don't ask me the question. Get out of here with your fake ass question. All right, and on that, we're going to wrap up with the song. If you like the song, because it is an awesome song, so of course you'd like it, check out Complicated. He's also streaming on Saturday with his full band as a 3-piece jazz trio, futuristic jazz, I guess I would say, at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Complicated. I'll pop that link up again. And if you want to know if it's something that you want to tune in for, watch the video on demand. Oh, that's sample. I put up Samplicated. I don't know who Samplicated is. There we go. You can check out twitch.tv/Complicated right now to listen to the last 2 shows to know if it's something you want to tune into live. But I guarantee you'll hear 1 or 2 of those songs and be like, oh yeah, I got to put this on my calendar and check this out on Saturday too. All right, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the video on demand. I'll see you all again on Saturday. What's this one?
Blake said, imagination is spiritual sensation. Spiritual sensation. But how would I feel after him at night? Well, first of all, he does all things, good, bad, or indifferent. And he waits on me, just as indifferent and as swiftly when the will in me is evil as when it is good. Because he is a creative power. He kills, he makes alive, he wounds, he heals. All things are done by the one creative power. There isn't another God who is evil and one that is good, one that is altogether loving and one that is altogether hating. No, only one power. And that power is the human imagination. So, how will I then feel after him? What would the feeling be like if it were true? But true, that I am the man that I would like to be, what would the feeling be like? Tell me. For all things are made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Well, now, if I had dared to assume that I am now the man that I want to be, and I persist in that assumption, watching my mind morning, noon, and night, that anything that I find myself dwelling upon that is in conflict with that assumption, I ignore it. I put it aside. I will be faithful to this divine vision, the vision of myself. So anytime I catch myself daring to feel less than the thing that I'm feeling or trying to externalize in my world, I simply stop it and go back to that assumption. I am the man that I want to be. If I persist in it and it becomes a fact, then I have found it. I don't observe imagining as I do objects in space. I am the reality that is called imagining. So you don't see God, because God is spirit, but you see the results of his activity in you. He is active in you as you imagine. You're completely free to imagine good, bad, or indifferent. So you simply select what you want to imagine. Would you like to be, and you name it. Well, you say, but I don't have the background for it. I do not have any of the qualifications for it. It doesn't really matter. If imagining creates reality, you do not need the qualifications that the world thinks you need. All you need to do is simply to boldly assume that you are the man, the woman that you would like to be. And if it proves itself in performance, then you found it. So Paul said to the Ephesians, feel after him and you'll find him. Well, I have seen it numberless times in my 34 years of teaching. I started back in February of 1938. And here I am, this is February of 1972, and I'm yet to see it fail. If we, the operant power, applies it. It doesn't apply itself. We are the operant power. For in man is God, and God is man's own wonderful human imagination. So if I dare to assume that I am the one that I would like to be, well, that's God who's doing it. So how will I turn then to God tonight? Say, a half dozen people asked of me tonight. It takes no time. They voiced their request. It's a statement made in the book of John, the Epistle of John. If we know that he hears us in whatever we ask of him, we know that we have already obtained the request made of him. Well, when they're talking to me, they say, I would like so and so. Instantly it comes within the frame of my golden rule. It's something I would like myself. If I were in their present state of consciousness, I would like that. It doesn't violate my rule. It doesn't injure someone. It doesn't take from anyone. Well now, did I hear it? I heard it. Well, if I and my Father are one, but then my Father heard it. I do not know the means that will be employed to bring it to pass, but I can't deny that I heard it. If I heard it, then I and my Father are one. But can I not now say to my inner being, thank you, Father? You heard it, because I heard it. Well, if we know that he hears all that we ask of him, then we know we have already obtained the request made of him. So as to say to me, I would like so and so for that. I heard it. I do not know, as a man called Neville, how it's going to happen. I do not know. I'm not going to suggest what they do or what they should do. I only know that I heard it, and if I heard it, my Father heard it, because he and I are one. He is my own wonderful human imagination. So I could actually say within myself as though we were two. Thank you. You heard it, I heard it. And then allow the depth of my own being to devise the means necessary to bring it to pass. And then I am not responsible from that moment on. I do not call them up and say, did it happen? I do not get in touch with them and write them and say, tell me, how are things coming? It's not my concern. I did what was asked of me. And all that was asked of me was to use my imagination lovingly on their behalf. Well, I did it. In the twinkle of an eye. I don't have to go into some sweat to do it. I don't have to go to some church and do it. Go to some synagogue and do it. Or some so-called holy place. Wherever I stand should be holy, because the Father is within me. And where can you go to a more holy place than where God is? If I know God is my own wonderful human imagination, then where can I go that could be more holy than wherever I am, no matter where it is? So the request is made, I heard it, and then having heard it, I give thanks to the being within me who has the means, the wisdom, and the power to externalize.